This is CBC Vancouver News.
He didn't deserve to die.
Families who have lost loved ones during police interactions are demanding change so others don't suffer the same heartbreak.
They shoot and kill our daughters and leave them in the streets.
A massive injection of cash for TransLink.
We have to act now to stabilize TransLink's finances.
Why the province is stepping in to help. And tech and retail out, offices in.
So we're in a time of change, and I think that's really clear. But we're really hopeful and positive that Vancouver's got a lot to offer.
The changing landscape of downtown Vancouver. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. Dan is away tonight. BC's newest energy project faces more questions about its compatibility with the province's climate goals. The government has pledged to reduce oil and gas emissions significantly by 2030. But as John Hernandez reports, some climate experts say the new LNG project is a step backwards.
Just weeks before he was sworn in, BC's incoming premier said,
"We cannot continue to subsidize fossil fuels and expect to transition to a clean energy future."
A quote critics say gravely contradicts the approval of BC's latest liquefied natural gas project.
BC continues to be a jurisdiction that wants to have its cake and eat it too.
Cedar LNG, a Kitimat facility proposed by the Haisla Nation, would liquefy about 3 million tons of LNG per year for export to Asian markets. The project was granted an environmental assessment certificate on Tuesday.
The choice between protecting the environment and creating good jobs is a false one. We see a better way.
BC has legislated substantial reductions to greenhouse gas emissions over the next 3 decades, including a 38% reduction in oil and gas emissions by 2030. Some climate experts say Cedar LNG doesn't align at all with the targets.
We are a fossil fuel mining province, and we kind of ignore that when we come up with our climate change plans.
In response, BC also launched an energy action framework stipulating the new facility hit zero emissions by 2030. But there are concerns it doesn't address emissions in other parts of the supply chain.
You're still shipping natural gas to Asia, and it's getting burnt, so you're still causing larger greenhouse gas emissions.
There will also be an emissions cap, but opposition members are left wondering what it will be.
When we were asking questions about some of the details, they're yet to be determined.
Still, members of the Haisla Nation contend LNG is the most viable option when it comes to expanding their resource sector and preserving the land.
There's a reason why my band did not go down the road of solar and wind. There's just too many unanswered questions. There was too much land impact.
Despite both optimism and concern, there are no guarantees yet that this project will go through, with investment decisions still up for debate. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
At the center of the LNG debate is the question of the economy and the climate and whether you can balance both. Some experts believe so, pointing to other successful examples of First Nations communities who have benefited from economic development within renewable energy industries.
In Treaty 8 territory, the Saulteaux First Nation has recently built a 15-megawatt wind farm, and that project, the Sakuna wind energy project, created jobs in that community, and those wind turbines are going to be producing energy for many, many years to come.
A warning for our viewers, this next story contains some disturbing details. RCMP are investigating after 17 wild horses were shot and killed in a remote area of BC. Police say the dead horses were found on provincial Crown land north of Wallachine near Kamloops. The department says the wild horses were a herd that was often in the area. The bodies of the horses were all found within about 2 kilometers of each other, and police believe the carcasses had been left on the site for days before being discovered. Indigenous and Black communities came together today in memory of loved ones who died from violence at the hands of police. This comes as groups across the country are marking International Day Against Police Brutality. As Yasmin Gandam reports, families and advocates are calling for action and accountability.
He didn't deserve to die.
Sobs could be heard throughout the room, mothers remembering their sons and daughters. Speaking at the opening of an art exhibit on the downtown east side featuring the names of those who have died.
I don't want my great-grandson to have to think that he's going to face being shot down in the street.
Laura Holland's son Jared was shot and killed by RCMP officers in Campbell River outside of Tim Hortons in July of 2021. She says it was a senseless tragedy.
I don't feel any shame about who my son was. I don't feel any shame about who he was as a person, as a man, as a father.
BC's police watchdog has since found reasonable grounds for possible charges against the 3 officers. Other parents hope they too will find justice for their loved ones.
He was so loving and so kind and so respectful.
Julian Jones was a 28-year-old who was shot in Tofino by an RCMP officer in February of 2021. The IIO launched an investigation and stated there were no grounds to believe that any officer committed an offense. His family disheartened.
Julian's life matters. His life matters.
A report by the organization Tracking Injustice shows 141 British Columbians died from police force since 2000, including a record 19 people in 2022. And in a statement, the IIO says they currently have 70 open investigations across the province. But some criminology experts say prevention is difficult without adequate resources and training.
These are emotionally charged events that are very hard to prevent. The only way you can reduce the fatality element is by helping the police officers to be aware and come up with techniques for handling their own aggression.
CBC reached out to the RCMP for comment but did not hear back. Meanwhile, these families wait for answers and change without loved ones by their side. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
The provincial government has stepped in nearly $500 million in emergency funding for TransLink. The money will make up for lost revenue due to low ridership levels sparked by the pandemic. Today, Premier David Eby announced $479 million will go to TransLink to avoid cuts and keep transit service reliable. At the height of the pandemic, ridership plunged on the transit system, and it still hasn't bounced back. In 2020, TransLink received $644 million in provincial and federal funding. Now TransLink has once again asked for help. The new bailout is from BC's surplus fund from this fiscal year.
Ridership is coming back, but slower than we would like. But what we definitely don't want to do right now is have TransLink cut back services, cause people not to come back to transit because the service simply isn't there for them, causing fewer people to choose transit, causing further cutbacks because of reduced revenue.
Despite the latest funding, there are also calls for the federal government to step up and help with future aid. Earlier this month, Nordstrom announced they would be exiting Canada, leaving a big hole in Vancouver's retail scene. And while many are speculating what could fill that gap, as Justin McElroy reports, a lot of the city's economic energy these days is on sectors other than retail.
Is the city of Vancouver concerned about what will fill one of the biggest retail spaces in the city? Not really.
We will bounce back at that location. I'm sure something great's going to go in there, and we'll continue on.
Ken Sim making those comments not from Vancouver, but Austin, Texas.
Is the amount of people from international community gather here to build bridges.
There might not be a bigger yearly event for tech and the new economy than South by Southwest in Austin, and it certainly fits with the mayor's focus.
We really want to tell the world that Vancouver's open for business.
And what businesses are Sim focusing on?
Well, technology with a big focus on XR, like augmented reality, virtual reality, green tech, and the blockchain.
And why?
Every single company, regardless of what you do, has a tech focus. And if you don't, you're not going to be around for long. And so coming down to South by, getting immersed in the new technologies and helping them roll out.
Call it tech bro buzz if you want, but the focus of Vancouver's economic push these days is pretty buzzy.
You've got big events coming like FIFA and people getting ready for that. There's a change in how we're doing our work. So hybrid working, more tech and innovation, digitalization of storefront. So we're in a time of change.
The Vancouver Economic Commission looks at a lot of data to see where trends are going, and a couple things are clear at the moment. For one, the city needs more office space, especially when you compare it with other Canadian hubs. It's partly why most of the big downtown developments lately have been office-based, from the Amazon Post to the Deloitte building to the new Microsoft office. Secondly, when it comes to retail, the strong areas these days aren't actually in the city of Vancouver, but in the suburbs. And it might stay that way for a while.
We're very aware that there's shifts. People are working from home more in the suburbs, so there's more demand for retail and hospitality there.
Add it up, and you can make an argument that downtown Vancouver is in the midst of a realignment, moving away from retail and more to a job and tech center.
I would agree. And, I think people have to realize there's a different way of looking at it as well. Everything's tech.
So yes, there's discussion about Nordstrom's.
I have hopeful optimism that it's a very central flagship location. And so looking that will be, a new tenant will come quickly.
But it's non-retail sectors that are on the mayor's mind these days.
Personal trip, I'm actually going down and adding a couple of days to meet executives in the movie industry in LA on Friday and Saturday.
Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The woman charged with mischief after interrupting Avril Lavigne's Juno performance while topless appeared in an Edmonton courtroom today.
I think to get people's attention, you got to do something drastic. I knew that would be a great headline. I low-key, in my heart of hearts, hoped that she would be like punk rock, girl power, give me the mic or something, but I don't think it could have gone any better.
The Vancouver woman is with a group called On Ottawa, whose goal is to demand government action on climate change. The 37-year-old had a ticket to the event. She says she was surprised by how easy it was to get onto the stage. Her next court appearance is April 5th. Our Johanna Wagstaff is back with another episode of the CBC Explore series, Planet Wonder. This time, she explores how animals are being forced to adapt to climate change. She headed to the BC Wildlife Park in Kamloops to ask the question, do we need to be cold-blooded for our warmer world? Let's take a look at what she found out.
We're live. I'm here at BC Wildlife Park with breaking news. Climate change is affecting all animals, but in different ways. I'm here with Pippin the goat to get some perspective. Pippin, how do you plan on regulating your body temperature during the next heat dome? What are your plans for a warmer world? Have you done any preparations? I'm working on getting answers, but I'm going to stay on this developing story. Back to you in studio.
Clear.
What we do know is that mammals have a hard time regulating their body temperature in excessive heat. We also know reptiles exist in extreme climates, so that got me wondering. Do we need to be cold-blooded for a warmer world?
As kids, most of us learned that the animal kingdom can be divided into two groups, cold-blooded and warm-blooded. But those terms are inaccurate, implying that animals are in a never-ending struggle to stay warm or cold. Get ready for Ectotherm versus Endotherm 101 with Wagstaff. Ectothermic animals, like reptiles and amphibians, rely on the external environment to regulate their body temperatures. If it's too hot, these animals seek cooler places, and if it's too cold, they may find a sunny spot to warm up. They can also slow down their metabolisms, reducing their need to seek food until environmental conditions improve. Endotherms, like mammals, birds, and us humans, regulate body temperatures by producing heat within the body. But that takes a lot of energy, aka food. And that means they have to slog through rougher conditions, like extreme heat, because they can't power down the furnace or AC unit. Before we find out if we'll be living under a reptile overlord someday, know that the animal kingdom has already taken a big hit from climate change. When facing a warmer world, animals basically respond in one of three ways. Some adapt their behaviors, others undergo rapid evolution and pass down beneficial traits, and still others straight up die out. To learn more about how climate change is impacting animals, we met up with research biologist Carl Larson. And what better location than the BC Wildlife Park in Kamloops, a rehabilitation center for orphaned and injured animals.
Okay, Carl and friends, how is climate change affecting animals?
There's a myriad number of ways that it could happen, and I think that's what people are really trying to work on right now, is understanding the different mechanisms by which climate change can affect animals. And we know it's going to have an effect. With some animals, it's very obvious. The habitat's going to change. Some animals are going to be trapped in some ways.
And what are all the different sort of general tools that animals might have to change up with climate change? You know, I think of hibernation right away.
Right. A big concept is migration, and people think of migration as, well, the birds fly back for the summer, but migration in a climate change context, really you're thinking about how is the species going to move across the landscape, particularly as habitat changes.
So we're still trying to figure a lot of this out.
I think so. I mean, it's very obvious for some species, like say high latitude species that are going to have their range of habitats expand. We may see increases in their range, but then also some animals, say, that are high elevation on mountains, like hoary marmots that depend on alpine habitat. Well, that may disappear completely, and so will the animals.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. The comeback is better than the setback.
Coming up, former anchor Lisa LaFlamme sits down with CBC, reflecting on her sudden exit from CTV National News and what's next. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. New Brunswick recently lost one of its most beloved artists, an artist members of the province's arts community say will be remembered for his unique personality, dedication, and talent.
Leopold Foulem was, without question, one of the most important New Brunswick artists that we've ever seen. And he created this kind of amalgam of assembly and humor, but incredible technical sophistication and talent in a language that no one else in the world worked like Leopold Foulem. The Acadian Peninsula was near and dear to his heart. He always came back every summer. It was really the time where he could really be himself and give of himself to his art. In fact, everything he ever made was made in Caracat.
If Leopold had a place here, it's because of the openness of the community. The community embraces all kinds of people, and we were lucky enough that Leopold was loved here and stayed here, and it made us a bitter small town. He was like a crossfade between Elton John and a famous Quebec writer who was kind of hippie. I always thought that Leopold, for me, was the first encounter of the intuition that, you know, adults were not all the same, and that Leopold somehow brought some magic in my life. So the house is like on itself a museum. I was walking in the first time I walked in the house, I thought, okay, like I'm in a film here. I already felt like it was so rich that anywhere that I would put the camera, something would happen, and that's actually what happened. Leopold was a great artist. He was a ceramist, but he wasn't. He was making a very important difference between doing pottery and doing ceramic as art. And so all his life, he sort of fought for this recognition of ceramic as art. He would say, I have to be the best, and there has to be no mistake in order for people to consider it like art.
I think that Leopold Foulem's legacy will be certainly as one of the greatest visual artists and sculptors that Eastern Canada has ever had. And the fact that one of the world's great ceramic artists can come from the Acadian Peninsula is just a wonderful testament to him, but also the cultural vitality and spirit of the region.
One of Canada's most recognizable news anchors is breaking her silence 7 months after being let go. Tonight, we bring you a sneak peek at a CBC News exclusive. Chief correspondent Adrian Arsenault talks with Lisa LaFlamme about her controversial exit and her next chapter.
You talked about feeling blindsided. That was a word that you used. Was there absolutely no hint that this was coming?
Everything in that tweet stands to this day.
Blindsided.
As I said, I think you live this same reality. In daily news, I would wake up every single day and have no idea what would happen between the moment I woke up and when I ended up back in my home after midnight. The same was true that day. You adapt to whatever it is, and that is what we are trained to do, is react to sudden change. And when I put it in perspective, and I do all the time, I think about, you know, the soldiers who we saw lose their legs in Afghanistan, or, you know, babies born in tarpaulins after the earthquake in Haiti. All of these things, those are sudden changes they don't come back from. We do. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, the comeback is better than the setback.
You can see the full interview on our website at cbc.ca. Here we have a live shot of Harbour Centre. Jules will have your full forecast coming up next.
Well, from the state of the world's atmosphere to the state of one town's water supply. Some stories to tee up for you this week, starting with another key report on global warming, the third one prepared by a panel of distinguished scientists. This time, it's about what governments can do to slow the warming trend. The report's coming out tomorrow. Tonight, here's Eve Savory with what to expect.
This company is drilling for sunshine, for the sun's energy stored in the earth.
In the first 1,000 feet of the Earth's surface, there's 50,000 times more energy stored than all the known oil and gas reserves in the world.
It's called geothermal energy. Pipes will move the heat from the ground, concentrate it, and circulate it through the building. This project will supply 98% of the heating for these heritage houses being retrofitted in Vancouver.
Pressure tested those ones.
Since natural gas prices soared, so did Mueller's business, 5 times what it was 2 years ago, and there's a side benefit.
You avoid producing CO2 and other emissions from burning a fossil fuel.
What's happening here is a microcosm of what an international group of scientists have been talking about all week in Ghana, cutting greenhouse gas emissions. And one of their conclusions is that countries can meet the goals they've set with known technologies.
So it's a good news story in a way. There are a lot of things we can do.
University of British Columbia's John Robinson is one of the report's authors.
This isn't wild-eyed speculation, but technologies we can envisage and produce, we can create a world that is significantly less heavy in the emitting side, that emits significantly less carbon. That's a pretty exciting finding, I think.
But some of the technologies the scientists support are controversial, nuclear energy, for example. And then there's the very hot issue of trading emissions. Should industrialized nations get credit for reducing emissions somewhere else, say by replacing coal plants in less developed countries? The scientists say there is a role. Also, they agree nations could get credit for protecting and planting forests to offset emissions. The last round of negotiations fell apart over exactly this. Danny Harvey teaches climate change and agrees with conditions.
What planting forests will do is buy us time. But if we're not at the same time working hard to reduce our fossil fuel emissions, then we've wasted that opportunity.
As for Mueller, he believes the public wants solutions. 30% of his customers buy the geothermal technology because it's green.
They want to do something environmentally. If they can combine that with saving money, it's just a bonus.
The scientists' report will be released tomorrow, and it will guide governments in their negotiations. Eve Savory, CBC News, Vancouver.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 30th, join Angela Starrett at the Alumni UBC webinar on Indigenous youth, nurturing the next generation. Hear from 3 Indigenous speakers who mentor Indigenous youth to share knowledge in their communities and beyond. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and never miss an episode of your favorite CBC drama or comedy with the free CBC Gem app. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Well, Jules, it was a beautiful day. I hope you got out there. I definitely went for a nice long walk today. A little chilly though still.
Same for me. I was up very early in the morning. Look what I saw while going for a coffee. The first cherry blossom in my neighborhood. I'm in Quetzalano.
So beautiful.
And it's only the beginning, because in the next few weeks, next few days, we're going to see more and more of that. So this morning was perfect. You're right. Walking this morning was perfect, but we have a little bit more cloud for tonight. It might be partly cloudy for tonight and tomorrow morning. We're not finished with winter yet, though. We still have that low pressure system up north that will bring rain and snow for the northwest of the province. Not very heavy, but still going to be there for 24 hours. For the interior, but it's going to be mostly cloudy for tonight. Tomorrow, it's going to clear up very fast with the high pressure system that will slide into the province. It will clear most of the province except for the northwest. That is at the end of the day. So in that region, you still have some rain. The rain amount is really low, 2 to 4 millimeters. You'll have some snow also in that area. It will be the same thing with Dease Lake. For the south, it's looking pretty good. I'm going to come back because I was too fast. Double digit for tomorrow, and we're going to keep the double digit and maybe even raise the temperatures for the next few days. The winds are going to be very low, and it's going to be much better in the afternoon. Partly cloudy in the morning for the Okanagan, in the afternoon mostly sunny also for the southeast of the province. It's going to be a beautiful day, and for Nelson, 9 degrees is pretty warm for this time of year. Up north, we have snow, melting snow, rain, a little bit of everything for that region, a little bit of sun for the northeast of the province. And for the next few days, finally, we're going to feel the warmth of the temperature are going to rise a little bit from 12 to 13 maybe, few scattered showers for Sunday. So we have 2 or 3 days of sun, and we can feel finally the spring coming up.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited to see those double digits. Thank you so much. Well, that is your late news for Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m.